If the last lesson taught you how to control your mornings, this one will teach you how to control your mind in the storm. Every time you react, they win. Every time you stay calm, they lose direction. You don't need to yell. You don't need to argue. You don't even need to cut them off. Why? Because toxic people don't actually feed on your presence, they feed on your reaction. The real power isn't found in fighting back. It's found in becoming so calm, so deeply grounded, that no storm, no matter how loud, can reach your peace. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. And if you don't feel harmed, you haven't been. This isn't about survival anymore. It's about becoming untouchable, not by locking them out, but by closing the gate to your own mind. Let's get one thing straight. Toxic people are not your biggest problem. Your reaction to them is. You can leave a job, block a friend, even move across the country. But here's the uncomfortable truth no one likes to admit. You can't outrun what you haven't mastered. You could change your environment a dozen times, but if your emotional immune system is still weak, someone new will trigger you the same old way. This is where most people get stuck, thinking that external change will fix an internal weakness. But the Stoics knew better. Epictetus put it simply, it's not things that upset us, but our judgments about them. Toxic people don't win because they're smarter, louder, or stronger. They win because you gave them access to your emotions, their greatest weapon. Isn't their words, it's your reaction to their words. Here's a real-life example. Let's say there's a colleague, let's call her Karen. In every meeting, she throws subtle jabs. Well, some of us double-check the reports. You know she's talking about you. Your chest tightens. Your jaw clenches. You want to snap back, to defend yourself. But here's where you shift. You don't single quotes T. Instead, you breathe. You look her in the eye, not with anger, but with complete stillness. Your voice stays calm. Your posture relaxed. You speak clearly, directly, and move on. That's not weakness. That's mastery. That's emotional intelligence. That's Stoicism. And here's the fascinating part. Karen escalates. She pushes harder, raises her voice. Why? Because your calmness exposes her chaos. Toxic people like her don't seek truth, they seek attention. And when you stop reacting, you stop being their audience. This matters more than you think. Most people live like emotional puppet strings pulled by anyone who knows their buttons. One sarcastic comment ruins their day. One toxic message triggers a spiral of overthinking. One guilt trip makes them question their entire worth. But the Stoics taught something radical. No one controls your mind unless you hand them the keys. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to win arguments. You don't even need to defend your character. What you do need is discipline. Discipline to stay calm when provoked. Discipline to choose peace over pettiness. Discipline to protect your energy like your life depends on it, because honestly, it does. And that brings us to the key idea. The smartest way to deal with toxic people is to never let them dictate the state of your mind. Starve them of your reaction. The smartest way to deal with toxic people isn't to fight them. It's to starve them of your attention, your emotions, your energy. They survive on your reactions. They thrive in your overthinking. They manipulate through your need to be seen, heard, and validated, cut the supply, and they vanish. It's that simple. It's that powerful. Mental strength isn't loud. It's not a clapback, a quote, or a dramatic confrontation. It's quiet, invisible, immovable. It's the ability to stay still in a room full of noise. It's letting chaos pass through you without leaving a scratch. You don't need to change them. You just need to change how much access they have to your inner world. And that shift begins with one decision, your response or your lack of it. Because the moment you stop reacting, you stop bleeding power. And that's when you become dangerous, not in a violent way, but in the most stoic, grounded, unshakable way possible. Let's make something very clear. Toxic people are not powerful. They don't have a secret weapon. They're not strategic. Masterminds. The only thing they have that you don't yet is practice. They've trained their whole lives in emotional manipulation. They've mastered the tone that creates guilt, the silence that provokes anxiety, the word that triggers insecurity. They're not thinking, they're executing instinct, muscle memory. And you're reacting, not because you're weak, but because you've never been trained for this kind of fight. It's emotional combat. Think of it like this. If you step into a boxing ring with a trained fighter, and you've never blocked a punch, you're going to get hit. Not because they're a monster, but because you never trained. Same with toxic people. You're walking into a psychological war zone with no armor, no plan, and wondering why you come out bruised. But the Stoics don't blame the opponent. They train for the battle. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. If someone's words can ruin your mood, if one passive-aggressive text can wreck your entire afternoon, the issue isn't them. The issue is your lack of emotional training. Let's get practical. Have you ever noticed that toxic people repeat the same behaviors? You forgive, they do it again. You explain, they twist your words. You open up, they weaponize your vulnerability. That's not miscommunication. That's not just who they are. It's a pattern, a program they've perfected. And what do? You try new strategies, arguing, explaining, avoiding, overthinking. Not because you're clear, but because you're lost in the fog. Until one day, you stop. You stop responding. You stop defending. You stop caring about being understood. And that moment, that's your power shift. You move from prey to presence, from reaction to command. You stop playing their game. You start writing your own rules, training the mind like a warrior. Ask any athlete, any soldier, any leader. Strength is trained, not inherited, and emotional strength is no different. You don't build it by reading quotes. You don't build it by watching videos. You build it in real time when someone pushes you, and you stay calm. You build it when you want to explode, but breathe instead. You build it when you're disrespected, and respond with stillness. That's self-mastery. That's emotional intelligence in its rawest, clearest form. And don't get it twisted. This kind of discipline, it's not soft. It's terrifying to people who thrive on chaos, because when you stop playing along, they lose control. Train your reactions. Reclaim your power. They lose control. the moment they lose control of you. Let's be clear, the toxic person in your life, they're not powerful. They've just practiced their dysfunction longer than you've practiced your discipline. But once you begin training your reactions, sharpening your self-worth, elevating your inner world above the noise of external drama, you become untouchable. You're not fragile, you're not weak, you're simply untrained. But training starts now. Let's cut through the noise. Every emotional outburst is a crack in your discipline. Every time someone pulls rage, sadness, or defensiveness out of you, what they're really pulling is your power. You're not expressing your truth. You're abandoning your center, and you're handing the remote control of your emotions to someone who doesn't even respect your peace. Epictetus said it best. Any person capable of angering you becomes your master. Let that settle. The illusion of standing up for yourself here's a myth we need to bury. If you don't react, you're weak. If you don't yell back, you're a doormat. If you don't defend yourself, you've lost. Wrong. Reacting isn't strength. Reacting is a reflex. And reflexes are born from conditioning, not choice. Stoic power doesn't come from yelling louder. It comes from responding with clarity, choosing logic over chaos, intention over impulse. That's what true mental strength looks like. That's the mark of a disciplined mind. Not getting dragged into emotional brawls just to feel seen. Real life. A Stoic in Lovelace say your partner throws a passive-aggressive jab after a long day. Must be nice to only think about yourself. Old you'd snap. Raise your voice. Pull up old fights. Hours lost. Emotions fried. But trained you pause. You ask, what outcome do I want? Peace or proof? And you say calmly, let's talk when we're both ready to really listen. No fight, no scene, just quiet strength. That's not silence. That's strategy. That's executive-level emotional intelligence. Why we react? The ego trap. Here's what most people miss. We don't react because they're right. We react because our ego is fragile. We feel insulted and crave validation. We feel attacked and scramble to defend. We feel misunderstood and beg to be seen. But if your peace is dependent on being understood, you'll be emotionally bankrupt. Every time someone disapproves of you, Marcus Aurelius said, you always own the option of having no opinion. Read that again. You don't have to explain. You don't have to engage. You don't even have to care. That's not apathy. That's spiritual discipline. The takeaway every time you react to a toxic person, you feed the illusion that they're in control. You give them exactly what they want. Chaos. But when you stay calm, not cold, not dismissive, just centered, you shift the entire dynamic. You stop playing their game. And once you stop playing, they lose. Emotional control is not suppression, it's selection. You choose what deserves your energy. And let's be honest, most of what toxic people say doesn't. So the next time someone tries to drag you into their storm, pause, breathe, master the moment. Because the most dangerous person in the room isn't the loudest, it's the one who chooses silence. With intention. The silent mastery. When you say nothing, you say everything. We've been taught that silence means surrender. That if you don't clap back, you've lost. That if you don't explain yourself, they win. That if you don't speak up, you must be weak. But the truth is this: the strongest presence in any room is often the one who says the least. Silence isn't passive, it's strategic. It's stoic. It's the decision to not feed chaos with your energy. The psychology of silence. Toxic people don't just want attention, they want reaction. They survive on your defenses, your justifications, your emotional response. Why? Because it gives them a script. They get to play the victim, the martyr, the misunderstood genius. But the moment you stop talking, you cut the script, and now they're lost. They escalate, they lash out, they get louder, because your stillness exposes their emptiness. Seneca wrote, "He who does not know how to be silent does not know how to speak. Until you've mastered restraint, your words mean nothing." Real life power move. Picture this. You're at a family dinner. That one uncle you know, the type, leans in with a smirk. Still single. Maybe you're just too picky for your own good. Everyone laughs. All eyes turn to you. Old you? You'd snap. Make a sarcastic jab. Maybe storm out. Maybe explain your life choices for the 100th time. But trained you? You sip your drink. You smile not passive-aggressively, but peacefully. And you say nothing. You let the comment hang in the air where it belongs. You don't feed it. You don't fight it. You stay calm. You stay composed. And just like that, you dominate the room without raising your voice. That's not suppression. That's spiritual clarity. That's not giving in. That's taking back your power. Why silence scares them? Here's the truth. Toxic people don't fear confrontation. They crave it. What they fear is irrelevance, and silence makes them irrelevant. When you don't flinch, when you don't justify, when you don't respond, they're left to sit with something they've avoided their whole lives. Their own noise. Silence forces them to confront themselves. And those who hate who they are will always try to pull noise out of you. But you're not here to be noise. You're here to be clarity, stillness, discipline, power. The Tocqueville doesn't mean ignoring the issue. It means refusing to give it life. You don't have to clap back. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to meet them on their level, because you're not on their level anymore. Let fools argue. Let the undisciplined shout. Let the empty provoke. A wise man watches. A strong one waits. A stoic chooses stillness. You're not silent because you're afraid. You're silent because you've trained for peace. That's not weakness. That's the highest form of strength. The paradox of power, you become, the more chaotic they get. At first, your silence confuses them. Then it irritates them. And eventually, it terrifies them. Why? Because toxic people don't fear loud arguments. They fear becoming irrelevant. And the moment you stop reacting, stop engaging, stop explaining, they realize something they never expected. They don't control you anymore. Starve the fire, and the flame dies alone. You stop feeding the fire. It flickers. And in that flicker, something terrifying happens. They feel their grip slipping. So they escalate. They say crueler things. They twist the narrative harder. They reach into your past and drag out the parts you've healed. They insult what you love, what you've buried, what you've finally outgrown. But don't mistake it for personal. It's not. It's tactical. They're losing ground, and they know it. Real-life example: think of someone who once held emotional power over you, an ex, a parent, a friend. Every time they reached out, you spiraled in anger, in guilt, in confusion. But one day, you didn't respond. No explanation, no apology, no emotional open door, just silence. And suddenly, they panicked. They double-texted. They played the victim. They accused you of changing. They weren't checking on you. They were checking your boundaries, testing if your peace was real or just temporary. And this is where most people break. They confuse chaos for connection. They think the shouting means they still care. But the Stoic knows better. The storm gets louder right before it dies. The deeper psychological truth: they are not even arguing with you. They're arguing with a ghost. A past version of you, the one who begged for approval, the one who over-explained, the one who stayed just to keep the peace. But now they face stillness. And stillness is a mirror. It reflects back everything they've been avoiding in themselves: their insecurity, their chaos, their hollowness. And that's why they panic. Because when you no longer serve as their emotional punching bag, they're forced to sit with their own instability, and they can't handle it. The takeaway: toxic people aren't afraid of your words, they're afraid of your detachment. They aren't shaken by your anger, they're shaken by your indifference. Because once you've built a mindset of peace, once you've trained yourself in resilience, in discipline, in self-control, they can't touch you anymore. Let them shout. Let them twist. Let them burn. Your job: stay calm. Stay grounded. Stay gone. That's how you win. Not through revenge. Not through confrontation. But through invisibility. The curtain falls when you walk away. Toxic people don't act out by accident. They perform by design. They script guilt trips. They rehearse the drama. They live for the spotlight of confrontation. But here's the part no one tells you: they can't perform without an audience. And the moment you stop clapping, stop reacting, the curtain drops. The show only continues. If you're still in your seat, real-world power moves. Say someone in your family dominates every gathering. Backhanded compliments. Attention-seeking drama. Then the classic victim routine. They need noise. They need conflict. They need your attention, good or bad, because it validates their existence. But what if you did the unthinkable? What if you walked away mid-scene? What if you didn't take the bait? What if you didn't flinch? They'd stutter. They'd stumble. They'd look for someone else to provoke. Because here's the truth: their power was never in what they said. It wasn't how much of yourself you gave away in return. And, as the Stoics remind us, a man who provokes you owns you. But a man who can't reach you fears you. Let them perform alone. You've left the theater. Antidote isn't confrontation. It's absence. Your emotional energy is currency. And attention, that's never neutral. It's an investment. Toxic people are emotional thieves. They know exactly how to provoke just enough to make you spend it on them. They don't want solutions. They don't want peace. They want a stage, and they want you to stay seated and engaged. But the moment you realize not everyone deserves a front row seat in your life, You begin curating your peace like a high-level executive manages their calendar. You stop explaining. You stop justifying. You stop dancing for their approval. And what's left? Stillness, clarity, control. Real-life example here, texting with someone who always pushes your buttons. They go silent for days. Then suddenly, wow, didn't expect you to act like this. The old you, you'd spiral. You'd send paragraphs. You'd try to fix it. But the new you don't respond. Not out of spite, but out of principle. You recognize the trap. You see the script, and you refuse to play the part. That's not ghosting. That's emotional detachment with intention. One of the most powerful things you'll ever master. The takeaway: toxic people crave validation through drama. They bait you with guilt. They manipulate with silence. They test you with passive aggression. But you're not a spectator anymore. You've left the theater. You've walked off the stage. And your life is no longer a prop in their performance. In the Stoic world, power isn't loud. It's quiet refusal. It's the silent exit from a performance you never auditioned for. And when the curtain falls, you're already gone. The deeper truffers what no one wants to admit. You can block their number, delete their photos, move across the country. But if they still live inside your mind, they still win. Because it was never just about physical distance. It was always about emotional attachment. You don't cut a toxic person off by walking away. You cut them off by walking free inside yourself. Mental captivity. You've heard this before. I haven't spoken to them in months, but I still can't stop thinking about what they said. Or, I blocked them, but part of me still wonders if I was the problem. That's not peace. That's mental captivity. Because they don't need to be in your life to control you. They just need to rent space in your thoughts. And most people, they keep paying the rent. Real life breakdown. You finally go: no contact, no more texts, no more fights, no more manipulation. But then you replay every conversation. You question your choices. You feel guilt, even though you were the one hurt. What's happening? You cut access, but left the bond alive. You're still hoping they'll change. Still craving that one apology. Still waiting to be understood. But here's the hard Stoic truth. They already know. They just don't care. And once you accept that, truly accept it, you reclaim every inch of your emotional power. Final reflection: letting go does not mean losing. People fear detachment because it feels like defeat. But the Stoics teach us, true freedom is not found in escape from people, but in escape from needing their approval. Let go, not to lose, but to win within. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean surrender. It means you've outgrown the illusion that closure will set you free. The Stoics don't let go to lose. They let go to win inwardly. Detachment isn't cold. It's clear. It's choosing not to chase explanations from people committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need one last talk. You don't need one last text. You don't need them to finally get it. You need peace. You need self-worth that doesn't depend on whether or not someone else sees your value. You need the emotional discipline to say, I am no longer available for this cycle. The real takeaway: cutting someone off is easy, but cutting off the mental replay, the guilt, the rumination, the what-ifs, that's where the real work begins. True detachment is when you no longer need their reaction to validate your peace. Their name brings indifference, not emotion. Their memory is a chapter, not the whole book. To be free is to no longer be haunted. And when you cut the invisible string, not with hate, not with revenge, but with clarity and self-respect, that's the day you finally walk away. The hidden reason they still have power: we do toxic people still affect you? It's not because they're smarter, not because they're stronger, and definitely not because they're right. It's because some part of you still craves their approval. You want them to recognize your effort, validate your goodness, admit they were wrong. You didn't deserve it. But here's the truth that stings before it heals. You don't need their approval. You need your own respect. The root of manipulation. Toxic people don't manipulate with logic. They manipulate through your emotional need for validation. They see the cracks. They poke the bruises. They dangle their approval like a prize. Then snatch it back when you don't comply. Silence, sarcasm, guilt. These aren't misunderstandings. They're strategies. Not because they're confused, but because they know exactly what keeps you hooked. And what keeps you hooked is the illusion that, if I just try harder, they'll finally treat me right. That illusion isn't love. It's control. And as long as you seek their validation, you're putting your self-worth on sale. Real-life reflection. Think of the last time someone hurt you. You knew they crossed a line. You knew you didn't deserve it. But instead of walking away, you explained, you pleaded, you waited for a maybe. Why? Because deep down you believed, if they approve of me again, I'll finally feel okay. But here's the Stoic truth. No one can give you self-worth. It must be built, not borrowed. Their approval isn't peace. It's a drug. Temporary, unstable, dangerously addictive. What self-respect actually looks like: self-respect doesn't yell. It doesn't need to prove anything. It doesn't require an audience. It's quiet, unshaken, calm. It's walking away without a scene. It's choosing not to reply to a manipulative message, not out of bitterness, but because you're clear. It's realizing, I do not need to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding me. And once that clicks, everything changes. You stop seeking closer. You stop fighting to be seen. You stop lowering your standards to keep connections alive. You stop trading your peace for someone else's comfort. Stoic alternative to approval. These Stoics didn't beg for recognition. They didn't live for applause. They tied their worth to virtue, not validation. Marcus Aurelius wrote, ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions. Pain can refine you. If you stop running from it, you've been hurt, not annoyed, not irritated, wounded by someone who knew exactly where to cut and did it anyway. Maybe it was a betrayal. Maybe it was manipulation. Or maybe it was the slow, steady erosion of your worth by someone who swore they loved you. Whatever it was, you're carrying the scar. But the real question is, what will you do with it? You don't need their applause. You need to stop performing. Here's the Stoic truth. You don't need them to tell you you're enough. You need to believe it, especially if they never do. You don't need their attention. You need to stop giving them the power to decide how you feel. You don't need to prove your value to people who couldn't see it in the first place. You don't need their applause. You need to stop performing. Because the day you choose self-respect over approval is the day you stop being manipulated. You stop shrinking. You stop bending yourself to fit a mold you were never made for, and something powerful happens. You become whole again, not because they gave you closure, but because you gave it to yourself. The two traps of pain: most people stay stuck in one of two loops. They suppress their pain pretending it never happened, or they wallow in it replaying every detail, hoping for closure. But the Stoics? They offered a third path: transform it. Marcus Aurelius said, "What stands in the way becomes the way." You don't avoid pain. You face it. You study it. You learn from it. And then you sharpen yourself with it. Constructive rage. When pain becomes power. There are two kinds of rage: the kind that poisons, and the kind that builds. When you channel your pain into bitterness or revenge, you rot from the inside out. But when you channel it through clarity, discipline, direction, it becomes fuel. You don't scream back. You build in silence. You don't argue to be seen. You validate yourself through results, through progress, through mastery. Every time you were rejected, overlooked, dismissed, you take that weight and convert it into motion. That's not denial. That's emotional alchemy. Real life rebirth. You were in a relationship where love was a transaction. You had to earn it. Your best was never enough. You broke. You begged. Still, they made you feel like nothing. But now you train. You heal. You rise. You build a life so grounded in peace, so rich in purpose, that they become a footnote, not the headline. You don't live to prove them wrong. You live to prove that they never had the final say in who you'd become. Pain will either refine you or define you. Pain is inevitable, but who you become because of it is your choice. Toxic people want your pain to trap you, to keep you small, doubting, unfinished. But when you use that pain as fire to forge discipline, clarity, spiritual power, you become something far more dangerous than angry, untouchable. I survived you. I grew from what you tried to break. And now, you can no longer reach me. Take away the pain they caused. It doesn't get the final word. You do. The smartest way to win is to rise and silence the pain they caused you. It's not your shame. It's your source code. It's proof that you didn't quit, that you didn't shrink, that you survived what was meant to break you and used it to build your higher self. So don't run from the pain. Don't hide it. Don't drown in it. Use it. Turn it into standards, into stillness, into a silence so powerful it echoes louder than any revenge ever could. Because your best comeback was never a reaction. It was your evolution. Stillness is power. Real power isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It doesn't yell. Real power is still. Most people think power looks like domination, the louder voice, the sharper words, the bigger reaction. But Stoic power, it waits, it watches, it refuses to be moved. As Epictetus said, if someone provokes you, realize your mind is complicit in the provocation. No one can shake you unless you agree to be shaken. Real life mastery. You get the toxic message. The one laced with blame and guilt. The old you would have typed paragraphs, explained, defended, cried. But now you recognize the trap. You breathe. You don't respond. Not because you're bitter, but because that version of you no longer exists. And that's not avoidance. That's mastery. Stop playing toxic. People don't disappear because you fight them. They disappear when they realize they can't reach you anymore. That moment doesn't come with a bang, but a whisper. It's the non-reaction, the silence in the storm, the refusal to hand your peace to anyone unworthy of it. And when you stop reacting, you stop bleeding energy. You stop playing their game. You stop being controlled. And suddenly they fade. Not because you destroyed them, but because you became someone they can no longer touch. Now you know the smartest way to deal with toxic people was never to yell, never to argue, never to prove your worth to someone who never recognized it. It was to become untouchable. Not because you blocked them, not because you burned the bridge, but because you built a fortress inside yourself that no one can break through. You didn't destroy them. You didn't need to. You just stopped letting them live inside your head. Rent-free. And in that moment, you became something rare, unshakable, clear, gone. Let them perform. Let them twist the story. Let them scream into the void. You're no longer in the audience. Now it's your turn. If this message resonated with you, if it lit something in your chest, then don't let it stop here. Leave a comment. What's one toxic situation you're finally ready to stop reacting to? Let your clarity inspire someone else. Subscribe to Stoic Capsule for weekly videos that help you train your inner discipline, master your mind, and protect your peace. Because peace isn't just a mood, it's a mindset. And every week, we sharpen it together. You don't win by reacting. You win by rising.